everyone. Uh, we're gonna maybe just give one more minute to get everybody started, but this is our final series of the Outdoor Recreation Knowledge Exchange, and we just wanted to say welcome.
Thanks for having us.
This is
Yay!
great.
Yes. Okay. Um, so it's 12:01. We'll get started so that you guys can eat your lunch and then get on your way while you're listening to this. I'm Guinevere Nelson, and I am your facilitator for today. This is our Outdoor Recreation Knowledge Exchange, and this webinar series is designed to connect, inform, and support educators, business leaders, policymakers, nonprofits, land managers, recreation professionals, and outdoor enthusiasts. We have a big aim here. Together, we explore the key issues shaping outdoor recreation, tourism, stewardship, workforce, and innovation across our states. The series was developed through a collaborative effort between partners in Wyoming, Colorado, Montana, and Utah, reflecting a shared commitment across the Mountain West to strengthen outdoor recreation through knowledge sharing and partnership. Is this the next slide, Haley? Cool. The purpose of the series is to create a space where we can share knowledge, build relationships, and strengthen the field of outdoor recreation across the region. Today, our focus is on the challenges and opportunities in outdoor guiding, and we have three guests joining us. I just wanted to give a shout out to my colleague Haley Sorg. She'll be monitoring the Q&A as well as dropping links into the chat. We're excited to share that we have lots of questions that will be presented to to the speakers from the registrants. So when you registered, you may have submitted a question, and we've tried to have those reflected here. We'll try to get to those, as many of those today as we can, but we encourage you to connect with the panelists if you have any other questions through that Q&A function down at the bottom. We're also in the process of building out a resources page from this webinar as well as the others in our series, where we'll try to get all the answers from our panelists for the questions that we weren't able to get through during this session. So I'd like to introduce Taylor Phillips, who will be our moderator and a speaker today. If you want to go ahead and take that away, Taylor.
That's great. I'm happy to do so, Guinevere. Hello, everyone. Great to be here with Jax and Jaden. And yeah, today we are going to dive deep into kind of guiding, pros, cons, ins and the outs, and just, kind of to frame kind of the next hour we have here. I think it's important to when we think about the future of guiding and outfitting, I believe it's important to recognize just how much this work sits at the intersection of tourism, education, and conservation. Guides, like we're not just trip leaders, we're storytellers, cultural ambassadors, and often the first point of connection between people and place. At a time when natural spaces are under increasing pressure and visitor expectations are always evolving, our industry has a unique opportunity and responsibility to help shape not just great experiences, but a deeper ethic of stewardship and belonging in the outdoors. Um, and I probably should have started with this. My name's, yes, Taylor Phillips. I'm in Jackson, Wyoming. In 2008, I founded Jackson EcoTour Adventures. So we offer wildlife viewing, cross-country skiing, snowshoeing programs throughout the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. And yeah, I mentioned, yeah, we've got Jax and Jaden here. So yeah, Jax is a fly fishing guide at the Wyoming Fishing Company in the summer and an ice fishing guide at a Border View Lodge in the winter. He has been guiding fishing in Wyoming for 8 years. He graduated from the University of Wyoming in 2022 with an ORTM and ENR major. Jaden is the owner of Hunt West LLC, a Wyoming-based hunt planning and consulting business serving clients across the West. Raised on a farm and ranch in Eastern Oregon, he pairs a lifelong connection to the land with professional expertise in the hunting industry. Alongside his consulting work, Jaden has spent the past 3 seasons guiding mule deer and elk hunters in Wyoming, and a season guiding red stag hunts in Argentina. Wow, that sounds amazing. He helps hunters navigate the logistical, regulatory, and conservation challenges of modern hunting, drawing on both hands-on guiding experience and strategic planning skills. Jaden also serves on the board of the Wyoming Wild Sheep Foundation and produces the Hunt West podcast, where he shares insights on Western hunting strategy, outdoor industry trends, and public land stewardship. So yeah, so great to be here with these two folks. Guinevere, I'll let you take it here, talking about our first interactive poll.
Great. So we have these polls here for you guys to let us know why some information. Our first question, you can either hit the link that's in the chat, or if you're a QR code fan, just take a picture of that. We would love to know, what are you hoping to get out of this webinar today? While you're doing that, Taylor, if you want to hand it off to the next speaker.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, so the next few minutes, we're going to share, the three of us will share our perspectives on guiding before we move into the more of the question and answer portion of this webinar. So, Jaden, why don't you take it away?
Do we
I'm
want to hit
sorry,
on?
Jax.
Yeah, there you go.
Jax, why don't you take it away?
Will do, Taylor. Yeah, thank you for that awesome introduction and glance at, what we're doing and what we're focused on today. I'll just kind of tag off of that intro and introduce myself and kind of give you guys a glance at what I do, what I provide, and what that looks like. So I'm Jax King. I'm from Wyoming. I more or less live in Saratoga, just over the hill from the University of Wyoming in Laramie. And I work for mostly the Wyoming Fishing Company doing contract fly fishing guide trips. As soon as I graduated in 22, also started an LLC to do a little bit of guiding under my own permits and my own insurance too. So I'll have you move into the next slide, Haley, and we'll start looking at my fly fishing guide trips. So these are, generally conducted from like March until October, your fairer weather months, and they're drift boat guide tours on the river, meaning I row the boat and the people kind of fish out of it, generally speaking. Our day usually starts out with, brief introduction to the area, what's around, what we're going to be doing. Sometimes I have to teach people how to fly fish. Sometimes they already know and they have, certain expectations. Either way, I shake hands, introduce myself, my dog, my boat, and get them out in the water. Our day is pretty straightforward. We float the rivers and fish. I help those guys into catching fish, basically speaking. We take a break middle of the day. We enjoy a lunch, enjoy a little bit of a break. And throughout the day between the fish, we, get to enjoy the wildlife and the other scenery that's around us. And then at the end, I finish up, we put the boat away and I take my customers back to their vehicles so that they can head home. And then usually try and keep, a pretty open line of contact with those people after the fact and throughout the whole year. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good brief glance at fly fishing. And now I'll move into the ice fishing guiding trips that I provide also. So in Wyoming, this is more generally speaking a primitive experience where you're out in a pop-up shelter with, lawn chairs and some fishing equipment that I provide. And, the expectation there is that the clients meet you in the morning and then you take them out onto either a reservoir or a lake and, you're toting a sled along. And like I said, it's kind of primitive. But with that, I've also, in the last couple of years, transitioned into the Minnesota economy because they've got quite a big, model for ice fishing out there versus out west. And I've been trying to figure out how to, bring that model from Minnesota back to Wyoming. And that model is a little bit more, luxurious, a little more cushy. You, you rent out a cabin on shore through a big lodge that has a restaurant and bar. And then you also rent a hard side house that is out on the lake. And you drive trucks out on the lake, you plow the roads, you give them street names, you give them maps. There's big propane furnaces in these houses so that they're nice and warm and comfortable. And throughout the winter, you move them to where the fish are at. So, there's a lot of moving pieces to that model, but I'm trying to figure out how to get that back to Wyoming. But yeah, I think that's a good roundup for the ice fishing guiding, and then I'll finish up with just kind of a little leap pad path of how I got to where I'm at. So back in college at the University of Wyoming, I took an internship in Camet, Wyoming for a company called Spur Outfitters. They're predominantly a big game guiding outfit. You know, Jaden might have a little more to say about that, but within that, they also had a fishing side of outfitting, and that was kind of where I started rowing boats, started learning how to teach people to fly fish and, the whole program and providing an experience for people for a couple of years there at Spur. And then I moved into Hacks Tackle in Saratoga, Wyoming. It's another local fly shop that, I just really spread my wings, took a lot of trips out of that company each year, and more or less, I'm not going to say perfected the program, but definitely dialed down the fishing program on how the day is supposed to go and how to provide an awesome experience for people. At about that same time, I finished college and started an LLC called Jack's Outdoors that's permitted and insured in Carbon County, Wyoming, and I do that, for select clients that want to fish there. But mostly, I take people fishing through the Wyoming Fishing Company on contract labor most of the year as well. March through October. I've been with that company for 4 years. And then the last two wintertime seasons, I've moved to Baudette, Minnesota, way up north by the Canadian border, to work at Borderview Lodge and provide that ice fishing experience I was talking about. That's all I've got, on my slides, and I'd be happy to answer any questions or, sum up anything else that didn't quite make sense.
Jax, that's great. I had no idea about the extent of ice fishing in Minnesota, like plowed roads on the ice, roads having street names. That's that's so fun.
Yeah, it's a whole different experience than what you might be used to seeing out west, and that's why I'm trying to figure out how to get it out here.
Yeah, that's great. What a cool history and perspective you bring to this webinar. All
Great.
right, Guinevere, poll
Sure.
number two, go for it.
All right. Poll number two is, in your current role, how often do you interact with guides or outfitters? The link is in the chat, or again, the QR code is ready for you if you want to take a picture.
All right, thanks for that. Jaden, it's your time to shine, sir. Share with us what you've got going on, your perspective that surrounds guiding in your world.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I'm really excited to get to some of the questions eventually too, because I think we've got a cool and honestly probably a little bit of a unique combo of guides on this panel because um, man, it just like Jax, you were talking about your time at University of Wyoming. Um, I have a pretty interesting non-traditional guiding background, and I know Taylor's had some awesome experiences. So I hopefully this next little bit will spark some thoughts or questions into the future. But I'm going to do the reverse of Jax. I'm going to talk a little bit about where I started. So we'll do the next slide. And this little picture here is me with my little brother and my dad. Like most people who are avid hunters, like I was brought into it from my dad and my grandpa. This photo was taken at our family farm that my grandpa ran up until like 2 years ago, and it was just kind of baked into what we did on the weekends, what we did as a family. It was just natural that we'd spend a lot of time outdoors. That's a couple miles outside of a little town in eastern Oregon, and there wasn't a whole lot else to do besides sports and doing stuff outdoors. Um, but interestingly, I took a really academic track after graduating high school. Got a degree at the University of Wyoming in business and in marketing. Had like a minor in Spanish and economics, and like my mom wanted me to go be some financial consultant in international business or something like that. And needless to say, we had a long conversation about this at Thanksgiving last week. So that's not how that panned out. Interestingly, though, I moved out to Laramie, Wyoming in 2018. A gal who I was with at the time, she went to grad school at University of Wyoming, and I just got ate up with spending as much time outdoors as possible. I was working for a magazine company in Oregon still, spending like 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day on the computer. So every chance I got to not be on the computer, I would take it. Um, that kind of morphed into you know a job with the Wyoming Wildlife Federation. So I worked in conservation for 5 years, and that's how I originally have met Taylor before. Um, and again, it was kind of like most of the work is really fulfilling, but it was all like computer based and not very much using my hands. So then through my work with Wyoming Wildlife Federation and just natural, like what I wanted to do, I spent a lot of time helping folks, which leads us to the next slide. So getting into guiding was more about like I was helping people, whether or not I had the tag, whether or not I was getting paid for it. This guy right here, he's ended up being one of my really good friends. I've actually been out to his farm in Michigan. His name's Jim, and he had a commissioner's tag, and obviously this is maybe a big difference in the different types of guiding. But with hunting guiding, obviously there's the licensing and tags component, and this is like a really premium, hard to get one. People are paying 30 to 40 to $50,000 to go do this hunt, and I basically just volunteered to go with him and take photos and help him out. Well, we ran into an outfitter on this hunt, and he goes, "What are you doing out here?" I was like, "I'm taking photos, helping these guys from Michigan out. Like they don't know what they're doing." And he goes, "Well, do you want a job?" And I was like, "I don't know, man. I don't think that guiding's for me. Like you got to deal with like jerks and like there's all sorts of drawbacks, and I'm going to sacrifice my own personal time." But he goes, "Come out, give it a shot. Like your first time, like see what it's all about. I'll pay you for it, and then like we can go from there." So then next slide. Um, we got into it, and this is like on the first week of me actually guiding with these guys. These are pretty premium licenses. They're really fun hunts. And this dude standing to my visual right, this was his first elk that he had ever gotten, and he'd only gotten a couple of animals before. And he's like a old ex-Marine, like really gruff dude. And when we got this elk, that he like, I'm glad he's not listening to this, but dude started crying like a baby. It was like one of the most intense emotional like responses to a successful hunt that I've ever seen. And I realized I was like, okay, this is not just all the negatives that you see or think about when it comes to guiding hunters. Um, and then I was like, okay, this is pretty sweet. Also ended up being pretty tight with this guy. And it's one of those things where you're like, okay, there's a lot more emotionally involved in this than just getting paid to go take someone out into the mountains and shoot something. The important difference here, though, is there's a lot of hunters who are really good at hunting, and there's a lot of guides who are really good at hunting, but there's a disconnect sometimes, I think, between guiding versus the skill of hunting. And I would imagine you all would say the same with your other like fields in guiding. There's a big difference between being good at what you're doing and being able to help someone have a really good experience. So when I think about guiding, I think about really just providing an awesome experience for somebody and kind of like what Taylor was talking about earlier, like storytelling and trying to explain more about the landscape and the animals and like the places and the history. Like that is what I oftentimes really focus on to make it a better experience than just going and getting an animal. Um, let's hit the next slide and we'll keep diving into this. But like the inherent downsides, and I'm sure everyone else can appreciate this, is you're gone a lot. I've just got engaged, and I'm like at the point in my life where I'm thinking about having a family and doing the whole thing. And one of the things you notice in guiding is like there's not a lot of like older professionals that are doing it. A lot of young people are the ones who end up doing most of the guiding because it's just not very conducive to like a fully functioning family life, let alone like the financial drawbacks or like the financial opportunity costs of being a guide. Um, the other side of it, man, my pickup has never been worse for wear since I started guiding. So like it is like definitely just one of those things like you do it because you love it, not because there's this huge financial upside. Um, The other side of it is like honestly, like every customer service like oriented career, man, there are some rough days. Like you have some rough folks that you're working with, and that's just kind of the nature of the beast. Um, but let's hit the next slide here. The upsides are like not only do you get to meet some incredible people and people that become lifelong friends, but it gets to take you like guiding takes you to some incredible places, and you see things that other people like just don't get an opportunity to. Or if they do get an opportunity to, it's like once in a blue moon, like when they do go on the guided hunt. So I'm really fortunate for that. I spend a lot less time on the computer now, and like it's a lot more motivating for me. Like we get paid in the outfits I work for, we get paid on a day rate. And if you did like the hourly rate of what you're making, boy, it's not good. But the fact of the matter is, like, I would rather spend 14 hours outside making a pretty crummy wage than to spend 8 hours on a computer most days. This photo here is of us taking the horses out going hunting in Argentina. We had a big crew that wanted to go do that, and I was like, man, now I've just got this. Is my one of my best friends is in the has the backpack on, and riding horses in Argentina across the plains is like one of my core memories. That it's like, wow, I can't believe I was able to go do this. That wasn't on my to-do list when I was a kid. I will say though, I can tell my mom I'm in international business when I'm going to Argentina, so maybe there's some element of that that's still stuck around. Let's do the next slide, and I think that this one is probably going to spur some conversation. The future of hunting guides and the future of guiding overall is largely predicated like on there being wildlife and wild places for us to share with people. And that's something I'm really passionate about. I was passionate about it with my job at Wyoming Wildlife Federation. So I'm on the board of the Wyoming Wild Sheep Foundation. But also, as you look at guides in general, there are very few people who are as passionate about making sure that we have wildlife and wild places into the future to like make sure that they can share it with people than guides. It's not always directed in maybe the most productive of manners. Like just like any field, you have folks who feel like they might know better than some other experts in the field, or because they spend so much time here, they have a strong connection and want to see it done in a specific way. But gosh, you'll be hard pressed to find people who are more passionate about conserving wildlife and wild places than guides, like any of the outdoor guides that we're talking about today. So as long as, people can come together from all walks of life who are passionate about these things and make sure that they are conserved into the future, I think there is a pretty strong future for hunting guides. And unfortunately, just the way that the whole world is trending, like we don't have more wild places being built. And so guides kind of serve as an important conduit for people who are disconnected from the wild lands and give them opportunity to see it for themselves. So that's kind of all I had, and I just wanted to reiterate, thank you guys for letting me hop on this as a panel. I've not been guiding as long as either of these two guys, but hopefully I've had some fun times that we can talk about and some interesting perspectives to go through.
I love that, Jaden. It's so cool to yeah to get to know you a little bit more through this panel and to hear your personal journey. And it's great, right? The path that we take. Sometimes it's hard to know, right, where that left hand turn, right hand turn is going to take us. But I think you framed a lot of this well, and gosh, was something that really resonated was your piece that, hey, like how connected guides are in all these different disciplines to kind of the conservation of the places that we're showing folks. That's really cool.
Yeah,
Uh,
thanks.
and all right, so poll number three, Guinevere, go for it.
Great. When you participate in guided experiences as a visitor, what do you value most? We'd love to have that information. You can do that through this QR code, and Haley's so great about putting that link in the chat. Haley, at some point, did you want to review these, or we'll just move on to the to the Q&A?
I think if we have time at the end, but I think we've got a lot of great Q&A questions. So
Great. All right. All right,
Um,
Taylor.
I Sounds great. I do like that. I love that last poll question. So I'm really excited to hear what folks have to say and how that can, better serve our guiding enterprises and others out there. So yeah, I'm excited to kind of share kind of my personal background, my entry into guiding, and kind of the pathway and what that looked like. Gosh, we all have vastly different ways that we kind of entered the space, but it seems like what I've heard from Jade and Jax, like a lot of it just like it comes to like connecting with people. Yeah, so I studied environmental studies and philosophy, and 100% those degrees shaped how I view, the natural world and our place in it. And certainly, one of the most formative experiences, that led me to guiding was hiking the Appalachian Trail, Georgia to Maine. It was the my next summer after I graduated college. I started walking north and I was thinking about, kind of the next state, friends that I was going to see on the trail, certain landmarks. And like, I couldn't take it. It was just, I wasn't like in the present. I picked up some field guides and started studying the kind of the flora, the fauna as I traveled north, and then all of a sudden, like there was like a small group of us that started to kind of pick apart the natural world and identify and eat edibles and explore the birds. And it created this awesome bond among us, and it just this shared curiosity for the natural world. And I think that really set the foundation for my move and my love for guiding. So I moved to Jackson, Wyoming in 2002. I guided for a few other companies, and in 2008, I started Jackson Hole EcoTour Adventures on my own. And, we offer primarily year-round wildlife viewing programs, interpretive programming into Yellowstone and Grand Teton. In the winter, we also offer Nordic skiing and snowshoeing programs in Grand Teton National Park. And yeah, so the first couple of years, it was just myself, kind of all the legwork, the insurance, the park reporting, guiding, working 80 hours a week, just getting it done, loving every minute of it. I wake up today and there's 40 people behind me now. And we're connecting 9 to 10,000 guests annually to this amazing ecosystem. And one thing that kind of really kind of keeps me motivated to keep this work up is, you know, yes, connecting with the clients and hearing about the impacts that we have. So, for instance, stories that I've heard from past clients, it's like, oh my gosh, Taylor, when my daughter was in middle school. We took a family trip out to Jackson. We spent a couple of days with you in the parks, and now she's pursuing a biology degree, and she relates that to and connects that to, the family trip we had to Wyoming. I was like, oh my gosh. Other comments, it's like, Taylor, we're going back home and we're researching conservation organizations, in our hometown. You hear stuff like that and you're like, oh wow, like we're making a difference. And that's just, yeah, that's really cool. It's powerful, right? It's not just showing people the wildlife. It's about building a connection between the group and the natural world. It's about forming a relationship and connection, with people amongst themselves on the program, and just understanding of the places that we're traveling through. And I really think that kind of the combination there does produce like a stewardship slash conservation ethic. On our programming, we teach science, of course, and we share the current political issues that surround the parks. There are many of them, as we know. When we share the both sides, all sides, as many sides as we can share, and it's like, hey, it's not for us to tell people what they should think about the issue. They decide when they have all the facts. I think that's really cool. And I don't know. Another thought about the guiding industry here, and I guess specifically to kind of the wildlife viewing industry, it's like, there's often a common idea that wildlife is only a resource for hunters and anglers. I'm a hunter. I love packing the freezer full of, fresh game meat for sure, and I love taking my son out with the fly rod on the Snake River. But it's like wildlife viewing is such a major industry. Certainly in the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem, but I also think like around the United States as well, and it's growing. And I think the guiding economy is real, right? It's there are guides on our team, so between tips and the wages, like they're making over $100,000 annually. Granted, Jackson's an expensive place to live, so they need to be compensated accordingly. But we also provide health insurance and retirement benefits. We definitely look at these as professional jobs, not just seasonal, tourism adjacent gigs. And, some challenges that we've come across would be, permitting can be a barrier. There's different land management agencies that we need to work with. And as federal administrations change, permitting processes can change. Sometimes it's just all out impossible to acquire permits because of short-staffed agencies, et cetera. And there's reporting requirements that add complexity. So those are some of the challenges, and just like customer service work it's really hard, right? We're getting folks from all over the world, different walks of life. We often we don't have any idea who these people are until they step in the vehicle, and regardless if you align with them or you don't, it's like you got to put a smile on, and you got to work hard to make this their best experience possible, right? We've got these folks for such a small window of time. We may be their only connection to this space. So gosh, it's important that we get the job done properly. There are programs that it feels like you're hanging out with your best buddy. Then there are other programs that are quite a bit more work because you got to dig and figure out how these people tick and what excites them. Why are they on the program? So I don't know. It's certainly it's pretty fun. Lots of opportunities here in the guiding space. We're meeting people at their best. They're on vacation. They're open-minded. They're excited for the most part, curious, and just an amazing opportunity to connect folks to the natural world. So yeah, I don't know, that's where I come from. That's kind of what really pushed me to found Jacksonville EcoTour Adventures, and it keeps me motivated to keep going. So going over here, yeah, I think we're ready for our next poll question.
I think we're actually going into our Q&A section, but I wanted to jump in here to share a few of the results from those poll questions. I know, Taylor, you said you were interested in that last one about, when you're participating in a guided experience, what do they value most? Got a lot of great responses. A lot of them said personal stories from the guide, learning about the history and current challenges of the place, having opportunities to donate to conservation to the place or interact with the conservation of a place, as well as that customer service is really key. So I think a lot of things that all of you guys really hit on is kind of what everybody said on this poll question of kind of their expectations.
Oh, that's really fun, Haley. Yeah, thanks for sharing those. And that made me think of a recent study that was published that came out of the University of Wyoming, and it's specific to kind of like the tourism space, wildlife, the importance of wildlife. So the study pretty much outlined that fewer people will come to Wyoming and the parks if there's less wildlife. and the vast majority of visitors, will pay a bit for conservation of the resource. And like I thought that was, I thought that was really cool. All right. So yeah, let's go into some Q and A's here, and I'll ask a question here, and Jax, Jaden, let's maybe instead of just going one after the other, let's maybe we can kind of make this as a more of a fluid kind of back and forth. I think that could be kind of fun.
Yeah,
Um,
sounds great.
so, so what skills or training do you believe new guides are most commonly missing when they enter the field?
I can start out on that, Taylor, for sure. I'd kind of thought about this question for a little bit this morning before we all hopped on, and I was considering the younger guides that start this, fly fishing guiding career or path, whatever they're doing with it. Um, I see two things jump out at me. It's one, like basic customer service and people skills, and then the literal, the technical skills that are necessary to be a competent guide. I don't always see those in my line of work in the fishing. You get a lot of ego guides, the people who think it might be easy and maybe don't have all of the necessary skills think, oh, I can jump in there, I can become a guide fairly quickly, and slap a couple flies in the water and make it look like I know what I'm doing. But that really tarnishes the experience when you have other guides who do have experience and are passionate about sharing it. I'm going to go back to that basic customer service and people skills thing. Within that, it seems like younger guides or newer fellas don't necessarily have the ability to read the customer, to read yourself and the dynamic of your experience or your program, as it's happening, looking at it being like, is this going good for them? And then finding a way to make it, better or more consistent. So those two things jumped at me. I'm sure they're similar in, Jaden's line of work. If a hunter or a hunting guide, doesn't know where the animal feeds or where his patterns are at or where he gets water, how good can he truly be for your client and what kind of experience can he provide? I don't know. That's something I see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, go ahead, Jaden.
I was just gonna say you nailed it. It's one of the biggest gaps I think I see with guides in general is like a knowledge of why they're doing a thing, or yeah, really that's like at the baseline. And whether it's fishing and you're like, well, this is why we're needing to throw this pattern, or you're hunting and you're like, oh crap, the elk aren't in this spot. Why aren't they there? Like there's usually some deeper knowledge, and knowledge about animal behavior, and that folks would need to apply. And I think oftentimes folks will get in who've had some success hunting or fishing for that matter, and they don't really know why it works, but they just do it. And then when you get in front of a client, you can't communicate what you're doing to them very well, and they don't get to learn much from you if you just are making it happen and just flying by the seat of your pants. Um, I don't know about the fishing world, but I actually really do like the fact that for hunting guide licenses in Wyoming, we have to have like basic first aid, and some of like all of our trucks have a fire extinguisher in them, and stuff like that. Like there are some basic safety things that I think that we do a pretty good job of covering and making sure that people are prepared for. But I honestly could see that world where that maybe is even a little bit better and bigger. And it goes back to the customer service thing. Is like you're dealing with, yeah, like one of my first clients was like in his mid 80s, and he couldn't hear and couldn't walk very far, and it was just like, okay, managing that hunter is very different than the hunter I had the following year, who was 27 years old, and he actually was also a guide in Colorado, and he just had hired us because we knew some more logistical things about the local place, and had some access. And so like those are two very different experiences when you're as a guide, and it's like you have to change how you guide for each individual person. And some folks, I don't think they think about how much that matters from the guiding perspective as a skill, because you got to be able to do multiple things and communicate with multiple types of people.
For sure. Yeah. Got that customer service and the human dynamics. I think sometimes are lost with new guides. And another thing, another piece that I was thinking about too, it's like the workload and expectations and lifestyles, right? It's early mornings, it's long days, late nights. The seasonality of things can be really tough, right? Where you're, hey, when it's go time, you're go time, it's go time, and you're working, 7 days a week for a couple of months straight, or whatever it is. Um, so, I think that is demanding for folks, right? There's the introverts and the extroverts out there. Gosh, when you're guiding, when you're with a client for 12 hours straight, if you're an introvert, that's tough. Um, but yeah, good stuff. Good, nice conversation for sure. Yeah, anything else on that, or should we move to our next question?
No, that's
Um,
good from my end. I think we covered it pretty good.
All right. Perfect. Perfect. Okay, this will be a fun one here. Our favorite friends. How can land managers and outfitters better collaborate to increase access while maintaining the resource protection that we all want and need?
sure. I'll start out again if you don't mind, Jaden.
Yeah.
Again, I put a little thought into this, and in the fishing side of the outfitting in Wyoming, there's no boards or associations that can voice, the different stakeholder values or opinions. I know there is for hunting that's been established for a long time, and I think it's important that we start looking at doing that for the fishing. So again, at a basic glance, the state of Wyoming needs to create a board that, you sort of, well-roundedly represents everybody in the picture for these things. Your land managers, your private landowners, your outfitters, and then of course your regular Joe fishermen. They matter too. And right now we got a lot of this going on, tug a rope, and it's not good, and we're not really getting anywhere with it. So, moving forward, I'd love to see something like that, although it might be difficult. I'll let that be a segue into Jaden's talk. I'm sure he can, voice a little more about those legislative efforts that have been successful in the hunting side.
Yeah, and just for a bit of background, like all of the outfitters and guides in Wyoming are underneath the Wyoming Outfitters and Guides Association. So, in order to be an outfitter, you have to have worked underneath an outfit for 5 seasons or more, and then you have to go through a lengthy application process. And then, as that relates to land management, like you have to have a use permit when it comes to guiding on federal public lands. And I think it's good that it reduces conflicts between outfitters and guides. But an interesting thing is like you also are creating a huge barrier to entry for anybody wanting to get into outfitting for themselves. And for instance, like it's probably not something I'm really interested in doing because of the permitting process. I'm happy to, I work for multiple outfits so that I can see different parts of Wyoming and do different hunts, but that's probably more of a rare thing than not in the guide hunting world. The other thing that's a really sticky topic, and I know that this might be something that's interesting to expound upon more, is like hunting is better for the people who have access when there isn't access for others. It's why a lot of times, like, people pay for outfitting for hunting or guiding for hunting because the guides will have specific access to private land. Or like in the Jackson area, they pay access or they pay guides because they can ride them in on a horse 20 something miles and get back to some incredible hunting. So the fact is, like, unfortunately, like for hunting, increased access generally means tougher hunting, and guides usually provide a conduit to provide access that isn't otherwise available to the public. I don't, as a public land user myself, like I don't necessarily think that we need to be restricting more access, but we just have to be really thoughtful about what it looks like from all types of recreation, because all of the access that we do end up creating does have an impact on what the wildlife that we're all wanting to access, like experience and feel and react to it too.
Yeah, that makes sense, Jaden, right? It's like, yes, we need to be thoughtful in how we permit entities to go afield. And it's something I've been thinking about. It's interesting, right? It's like, yes, I think one, like the permitting systems with these agencies definitely needs to be looked at and revamped. At the end of the day, right, these land managers and outfitters, like we ultimately want the same thing, right? It's like we want healthy ecosystems and just a quality experience, quality visitor experience. And I think building quality relationships with these agencies and entities that permit us, like I think that's key. It's just just having that open dialogue. We can be their eyes on the ground throughout the year. We should be inviting these land managers out on our programs, our hunts, our wildlife tours, our fishing trips. To give them like a hands-on feel for like what it's like to be a guide, like how it just lights up the guest and provides that incredible experience. So I think that would be incredibly helpful. I think permitting systems I think they're often outdated. They're slow to adapt. And a more dynamic system, I think, would be huge. So maybe one that includes seasonal adjustments, pilot programs, that could improve access without compromising, the resource. Maybe there's an opportunity to provide incentives, right, for high performing outfitters to, kind of give folks, kind of the gold star. They can show off, and that might just kind of rise the tide in general, and encourage others to kind of work at a high level. And I think one other thing that could be helpful, just to you know pr- provide a better outward experience would be just to collaborate more on kind of the educational piece and the conservation, right? If we have like similar messaging that guides are putting out, that the agencies are putting out, the public, they hear the same message from kind of from many different sources. I think that will better support the kind of the industry as a whole. And right. So if we see just, outfitters as the permit holders and land managers as gatekeepers, if you will, I think we're missing the point, missing the bigger opportunity. I think it'd be helpful just to see ourselves as co-stewards, right? Sharing responsibility for both the access and protection.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we could do a much better job of, and you just hit on, Taylor, was being like the eyes and ears on the ground. Because we all know, like land management agencies or our game and fish agency, like they don't have the human resources to have eyes and ears everywhere that they're managing. And it's something that I think I would imagine Jax has probably seen some things on the river where either you're noticing like, hey, like we're seeing a lot of pressure on fish in this place. Like this is maybe not great, or man, this is looking really good. I try to also like whenever I've seen a habitat project and that I'm hunting around it, like there's this one place in some BLM ground that I can think of in particular where they did a huge habitat treatment of juniper encroachment. And we've shot a couple of elk out of there. And it's like, dude, the elk love that treatment you guys did. And I think that that's reinforcing and can help provide more um, direction as to how we can improve the landscape when you have experiences that's like, wow, this is working.
Yeah, for sure. I'll tag off of both of those things because I had a thought on it. I work on the Green River over on Seed City National Fish and Wildlife Refuge, and their agency is the Fish and Wildlife Service. Just like most other public land agencies, they struggle to, keep people in um, position to, help regulate those spaces. And there's one person in particular that does the regulations, and he came forward early when I started working there and just made it a point to be friendly, to shake hands and say, hey, look, just because you're an outfitter and I'm a law enforcer doesn't mean we don't have to be friends. I'd really like you to keep an eye out for A, B, and C while you're out there. And, call me if you see it and we can work together on keeping this resource protected. That was one of the finest things I've ever seen personally, where I was like, okay, so the land management agency cares to collaborate. And, if that model could be followed in all of them, that would be great. But, it is what it is. We are where we are.
Yeah, no, 100%. So true, Jax. All right, this next question. I'm really excited to hear Jax and Jaden what you have to say on this one. So, what's one of the biggest day-to-day challenges you face as a guide that people outside of the industry might not realize?
Yeah, for me, it's as the program runner out there, as the guide, as the ship captain, if you will, there's a lot of variables in my program that I can't control. The weather, the water temperature, fishing conditions. And so within that, how do I provide a consistent experience for my clients? Especially throughout a whole year when you have spring season, summer season, fall season, just like you'd think things change. And sometimes with that, fishing isn't good. So my challenge from day to day, especially late in the summer, say like July and August, when the rivers are low, the water's hot, and fishing isn't good, how do I get these people to come back when the fishing isn't good? And we talked a little bit about this today, being a liaison into the surrounding environment, communities nearby, hey, check this out, go do that. Being a person that facilitates other experiences in Wyoming. I think that's really like one of my only strategies when the fishing isn't good. Is like, hey, well, today kind of sucked, sorry, but maybe go up, check out Taylor. He's got some really cool tours that you might be able to enjoy. It's only 2 hours away, something like that. But yeah, my challenges aren't maybe quite as broad as your guys's, but
No, I think like you led off with it. Like the honestly, like if I think about what I'm focused on every single day, it's what the conditions are, what the weather is. And unfortunately, like just conditions are always changing, especially like in the last 5 years or so, we've had quite a few droughts, and then we had a major winter, and that impacts not only like wildlife populations, but it impacts how critters use the landscape too. And so, to your point, like you're always managing expectations and trying to make a hunt feel really enjoyable and an adventure. Man, I had an absolute butt kicker in October. We were looking for mule deer, and luckily, though, I looked at the forecast and I kind of prefaced this to the guy. I was like, "Man, this is going to be a grind, but we're going to have a lot of fun. Just like hunting really hard. We're probably going to get in better shape this week. Like this is all part of the process." And he actually like he'd waited 17 years to draw this tag, and it was a hard opportunity to like get a deer. And we had a deer in front of us like his last scheduled day, and I was like, "Man, I'm enjoying spending time with you. Like, if you want to shoot this deer, like I'm happy, and like we'll have a great experience. But if you want to go into overtime, like I'm all about it." And just showing that um, it wasn't about the end result from the get-go, I think is really helpful and one of the biggest challenges though too, because the worst experiences I've had as a guide is when you get someone who comes in with a preconceived notion of what they're going to get out of it, and I'm like, you just can't. I've kind of have a saying like a lot of people write a check that they can't cash at the Bank of Mother Nature. Like it just is not going to happen.
For sure, Jaden. Yeah, and like I thought about this question here, the biggest day-to-day challenges we face. And and I think Jax and Jaden, like you kind of were, navigated around this a little bit, but I think it's like it's working with people. It's like it's that customer service and being that quote unquote that people person. I think it's one of our at least one of my biggest challenges, but I think it's also like where the magic is in the guiding space. So it's hard, but it's also it's kind of like why we do it. I've learned so much from visitors from around the world. And it's I don't know, it's so cool, right? We're navigating personalities, energy levels, language barriers, emotional needs, social dynamics. And like we're doing all the other things, right? We're looking for the critters, we're tracking, we're making sure our clients are fed and they don't need to use the restroom. But it's also kind of why we love it, right? Because that's part of cultivating these just amazing experiences that we do. So it's really fun. Um, hey, Haley and Guinevere, we've got like 5 minutes left. I know we have other questions, but I didn't know if you wanted to bring in any of the polling questions or had any other last thoughts.
I don't think so. I think we were really interested in the next question. And do you need that or I can tee
Oh,
that up
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
bit?
Let's do it.
Um,
Um,
what trends do you see emerging in the guiding outfitting sector that people should be paying attention to?
That's a great question. I talked a little bit about it in the last one, and it's probably going to be in the fishing world, this notion of increasing regulations aimed to protect the quality of fishing experiences. We just saw near Casper, Wyoming, in one of the more fished rivers in the state, they put on some regulations to reduce the amount of flies that you can use, and they also regulated the stretch of river in which you could float. So, we're starting to see some, laws changing, but along with that, hopefully, fingers crossed that there'll be some sort of board or association of people that can voice all of those things to reduce the contention between the public and the outfitters and the guides too. So
Yeah.
Yeah, it's some trends that I'm seeing. I feel like more and more of my guests over the years, like they're looking more for like a meaningful educational experience versus just show me the wildlife. And I think that's really cool. There's that growing hunger for the science-based interpretation, climate conservation awareness. They're looking for that storytelling component, I think. And I think also to the trends, just gosh, technology, right? And how technology is building, is growing and influencing this industry with search engine optimization, online reviews, like online booking systems. Like what is AI going to do to this industry? You're right. And, gosh, I hope that there's not a day. I don't think it's going to come where there are robots doing our job. Heck no. We won't allow that one. But yeah, certainly trends to watch, right?
Yeah, and I'll try to keep my end brief. I know we're low on time, but man, I wish more hunters maybe had the same mindset as some of Taylor's clients because I in the hunting world in particular, the trend is the opportunity for non-residents in particular to go hunting in Wyoming and across the West is getting lower and lower. So you're getting more people waiting 17, 18, 20 years to go on these hunts. And most folks assume that that plus paying some some money like is going to pay for an outcome. And I see it like increasing. Like they, in particular, as you can probably imagine, like there's a cohort of hunters who are like, "Well, I waited this long and I paid this much money. I should have this big of an animal." And it's a trend that I'm fighting hard against because it is detracting from all of the other things that like Taylor was hitting on of like and Jax of like having a really good experience. Um, but on the other side of things, like a trend that I'm nervous about is a bigger divide between the average public recreationalists and the people who are guiding and making a living sharing it with people. I think that you sometimes will see some conflicts between just the public and the guides using that landscape or the guides who are taking others out there because it's kind of a have or have nots like ideology or like narrative sometimes. And I think that can be really destructive and hopefully encouraging folks that we're all on the same team, especially as it comes to conservation and wildlife and wild places. Like an important that's an important battle to have. Is like we're trying to make sure that this is around for long into the future.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for that, Jaden. Yeah, so that it's 1 o'clock here. And yeah, just I want to thank everyone for taking the time to be here today and for engaging in this important conservation conversation about guiding in the outdoor tourism industry. And at the end of the day, guiding isn't just about showing people the wildlife or a fun activity or beautiful landscapes, right? It's about creating just this meaningful connection between people and place, right? It's about planting seeds of curiosity, awareness, and stewardship that can certainly ripple out in powerful ways. There are real challenges in the industry, right? We talked about some of them today, from permitting to customer service to staying adaptable in kind of this very unpredictable world, but the opportunities are vast. All right, we have the privilege of working outside, sharing something we care deeply about, and of shaping the visitor experience in one of the most extraordinary places. So thanks again. Haley, Guinevere, Jax, Jaden. This was a lot of fun. I had a blast, and I'm super thrilled and honored just to be part of the guiding community and in the Wyoming tourism industry.
Yeah, thank you, Taylor.
Yeah, appreciate you guys for having us.
Yeah, thanks everyone. As you're getting on your way, just wanted to say thank you for joining our final webinar series, and thank you to the panelists. It was a lot of fun, so thank you for having that. This QR code, or you can visit University of Wyoming Worth's webpage to see this recording as well as others. And as we build out our resource page, please check back. We really want to be a resource for this industry. We think we'll start these again next September, so look out. And if you guys have ideas for webinars you really want to know, reach out to Haley and I. So thank you guys so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.